Hi, everybody. Today's Thursday, January 23rd, 2025, and our friend Andrei Martyanov is back with us. Welcome, Andrei.
My pleasure.
Andrei, when we think of the Donald Trump's attitude to the conflict toward the conflict in Ukraine before 2024 presidential election, he was talking about 24 hours for putting an end to the conflict. As you remember well,
Yeah.
during those days we were just laughing at the way that he was talking about the conflict. And right now it seems that but on the other hand, in those days he was just sending some signs that he knows the reality of what's going on in Ukraine. Right now, and right after 2024 presidential election, after his inauguration, it seems that Donald Trump is a totally different character, has a totally different mindset toward the conflict in Ukraine. Here is what he said, Andrei, about the conflict.
Could be very soon.
And you talked a bit about Ukraine and Russia, but how long do you think it would take to end that conflict? And
I have to speak to President Putin. We're going to have to find out. He can't be thrilled. He's not doing so well. I mean, he's grinding it out, but most people thought that war would have been over in about 1 week. And now you're into 3 years, right? So he can't be thrilled. It's not making him look very good. Now, eventually, it's a big machine, so things will happen. But I think he'd be very well off to end that war. We have numbers that almost 1 million Russian soldiers have been killed. About 700,000 Ukrainian soldiers are killed. Russia's bigger. They have more soldiers to lose. But that's no way to run a country.
What has happened to Donald Trump and why is he putting out this sort of rhetoric, which I do believe that he knows they're not having any sort of connection with the reality of what's going on in Ukraine?
First, well, he's definitely not an idiot, make no mistake, but he is utterly incompetent man in any issues related to war, modern warfare, and considering the extremely low professional level of the Pentagon and national security circuit in Washington, which is primarily a propaganda machine, which recycles all information from Kiev regime, it's not surprising that he would believe those numbers. He obviously doesn't understand what attrition model is, how combat effectiveness are calculated. Evidently, most US generals do not understand that. And so he would believe any kind of numbers. And as a result, we have what we have. And considering the fact that he is a showman, he is the guy who runs successfully the show, TV show, no less. He's probably pretending that, his one-trick pony, his so-called strategy, it's not a strategy, it's a trick. It's basically, how to say it, legerdemain, just bully somebody and then kind of lower, after that, basically bottom line and try to, his favorite word is a deal. I mean, I don't know how else he can describe the deal, but I can tell you one thing. Obviously, he needs to be briefed by competent people, by people with the real military background, who understand the intricacies of the warfare and strategic objectives of Russia, that actually Russians are ready to continue to do another 3 years if it comes down to it. And obviously the numbers which he produced, it's complete garbage. Mr. Kellogg, Lieutenant General Kellogg, who is stuck in 1980s with his understanding of warfare, and I don't think so even then he knew really well about anything about it. He was in Paris meeting all kinds of the French political elements from Ukraine, like Yulia Tymoshenko. And obviously he was, I don't remember, was he in Kiev? Yeah, he communicated with Zelensky and people of this nature. So anyhow, he swallowed hook, line, and sinker all this garbage, which tells you immediately that how unprofessional those people are, which is not surprising. And if you, as the highest level, general level officer, do not understand and cannot assess the veracity or probability of it being correct numbers, especially related to the warfare and the modern warfare, all tactical and operational factors considered, then you're not professional. These are the guys who never saw anything. Well, Kellogg was in Vietnam. That was a more or less serious war. But even that, I mean, the guy evidently, he bought this thing, he brought it to Trump, and now they play with whatever they think they are playing with. But obviously, they are situationally unaware. Russia is doing economically great. And what can I say today? Well, Russians are already in Kharkov Oblast, and the fundamental thing which they do not understand is that Russians are there not for the territorial gains, albeit they will gain again more territory. They're already gaining it. It's about elimination of Kiev regime and possibly the state of Ukraine as such, as we know today. So there you go.
Here is what he put on his social media. And Andrei, how is he's trying to intimidate Russia with new sanctions, tariffs, and taxes, not only by the United States, but also by other countries. He's talking about, I don't know if he's talking about China, India, Indonesia, and these countries Turkey, that could be the case. But the Biden administration tried to do that. And we saw what was the result of those policies. Here is the graph by Financial Times. It shows how the GDP of Russia is growing and has grown so far. And on the other hand, when he talks about the sanctions, we know that Russia is under tremendous amount of sanctions right now. And they simply, I would say, they have no connection with the United States in terms of trades and all of these economic participations or import and exports. And here comes the question, what's going on in the mind of Trump when it comes to this sort of rhetoric, which we know that was the main, it was the main policy for the Biden administration for more than 2 years, almost 3 years of the conflict in Ukraine. But it seems that he's trying to, as you mentioned, he talks so big and he tries to intimidate these countries. Is Russia going to be intimidated by this sort of rhetoric?
I mean, wrong people he tries to intimidate, and he doesn't understand. He doesn't have not only bad hand in Lysenko, he doesn't have hand at all to start with, So the point is, and even IMF numbers are garbage. United States, for example, whatever they call it, GDP, which is of course the fictitious index, have been stagnating essentially. They were growing it by growing the value, so to speak, of real estate and all those financial indices which produce absolutely nothing. And the question here is that even in this tweet, of which I spoke yesterday, actually in my video, it was already a reaction of Kremlin today about his stolen valor claim. United States have been in stolen valor business for a long time, of assigning them, those small Russians, side kicks, who helped us to defeat Hitler. Well, obviously, Russia first, where he gets the 60 million. Again, as I already stated, the United States has an inherent problem with mathematics, okay? And especially U.S. military, which obviously confabulated its own history to the point that it's not even serious to talk about people when they do not understand basic things about World War II. And most of them, believe me, they don't. They never studied it properly. It is all propaganda, and their level of understanding of it is probably the level of the movie Patton. That's pretty much it. How Americans, stepped in, defeated Hitler, and, those 27 million Russians who died, So Kremlin already reacted to this. But not only that, also Mr. Petkov already stated today that, Russia is open to negotiations, but we see no change in posture of the United States. So, United States can continue and do what it pretends that it's the greatest thing ever and try to intimidate Russians. It's obviously useless because, I mean, in terms of the experience in warfare, in terms of experience of, overcoming any kind of hardships, United States and Russia, they're different leagues. United States doesn't even reach in the vicinity of what Russians know about war and how they plan it and how they overcome it. It's historical. It's nothing, as I already stated. The Russian general staff is older than the United States as the state. And but Trump, for some reason, believes it, and that tells you the quality of what is called national security circuit in the United States. These guys, these amateurs, essentially, who do not understand first thing about real economy, real war, and things of this nature, they thought that actually it will be the other way around. That within a couple of weeks of the start of special military operation, Russia will be smashed by those hellish sanctions. And that will be it. The Putin regime, will fall and Russians will rebel and things like that. They have no idea what they're dealing with. And you can quote me. There is not a single professor or any kind of in teaching position in, for example, Ivy League school in the United States who has any remote clue about Russia, about her capabilities, about real economy, and of course about her history. And so as a result, we are looking and observing systemic issues throughout the whole political system of the United States, which no matter what you do, it's like this famous anecdote about the Russian guy who worked on the manufacturing plant which produced the cradles. Each time he comes home and begins to assemble the cradle, he gets the Kalashnikov assault rifle, no matter what he does. Same here. But the problem is this whole thing, which is known as the foreign policy consensus for the United States, is over. We live in the 21st century in a completely new military technological paradigm. And again, you can quote me. I would love to talk to anybody, if they have enough guts to communicate with you, which they don't probably, that the United States lost the arms race. Simple as that. And so what he needs to go is basically rhetoric. So will he impose new sanctions? He already made a statement today, which is so ridiculous. You have to only scratch your head, because he stated that I will ask OPEC to lower the prices on oil. Okay, go ask. See for yourself what's going to happen, So, and they are in desperate, position in Washington. They try to play it any way they can to show that there are some people, obviously, in Washington who understand that the war has been lost. And it's not just a war, between Russia and, Ukraine. Ukraine already lost the war. We know that. It's just a matter of how many more people Russians will have to kill before Mr. Zelensky himself is behind bars or executed for crimes against humanity. It is about the fact that the United States lost. And it's lost not on the level of running from Afghanistan, which was bad enough. It's lost geopolitically on the historic scale. And they cannot live with that. But then again, it's Dunning-Kruger effect. You cannot explain the moron that he's moron because he's moron. You cannot explain to Washington elites that they're stupid because they will not understand that they are stupid. They won't even understand what you convey to them. And the only thing they know is PR. That's pretty much it. Another matter that what is, and again, this is still the level of statements so far. We'll see where it goes, is that I think so Trump doesn't want war, at least not for now. But that's the only positive which you get, from him. But he, as I already stated many times, I predicted it from the get-go. And, what Kremlin today says, no, nothing going to change. He will try to, continue to preserve whatever the Nazi regime in Kiev. And doing so, he will fail even more. It will be even bigger catastrophe for the United States and NATO, and even prostitutes from, there are very few people who are not prostitutes in American media, in mainstream media. Even the Hill, some bimbo, what her name, she reported today in Hill that Trump doesn't have any levers to influence Russia. Even some professionals come in and say, oh, we need to unify with the United States and Europe to provide the leverage. They don't understand. Russians do not need West anymore. Russians are done with the West, especially with Europe. With the United States, Russians need to talk because United States, at least for now, remains the superpower, and that has to be arranged. But Europeans, they are irrelevant. And so no matter what they do, the military bluff of the United States, of this finest fighting force in history, have been called. It is primarily, not all of it, but primarily a paper tiger. It cannot conduct any kind of the serious war, unless, of course, it is the sandal people, armed with a case only. And as a result, Mr. Trump has to face the reality. Is he facing it? There is some chance for it. But again, he was always, pompous, hot air balloon, so he loves to talk big. And at some point of time, his adjectives, his descriptive things like, oh, I had great conversation. I had a wonderful contact. And they're like, okay, what's so wonderful? You just talk to somebody. But yeah, he has this hyperbole type thing, trying to describe how great he is. And Putin obviously knows who he is. But Trump doesn't know who Putin is. That's for sure. I can tell you that.
Actually, we know that MBS has decided to invest $600 billion in the US economy because of Donald Trump. Here is, as you've mentioned, Andrei, here is what he said about the pressure he's going to put on Saudi Arabia.
Going to ask Saudi Arabia and OPEC to bring down the cost of oil. You got to bring it down, which frankly, I'm surprised they didn't do before the election. That didn't show a lot of love by them not doing it. I was a little surprised by that. If the price came down, the Russia-Ukraine war would end immediately. Right now, the price is high enough that that war will continue. You got to bring down the oil price. You got to end that war.
Here is the reason, Andrei, that I do believe that Donald Trump knows what's the reality in Ukraine, because he's trying to manipulate everything. He's trying to play a game with Russia. The way that he's talking about putting pressure on Saudi Arabia and bringing the price down, it's part of a campaign that he has in his mind in order to put a lot of pressure on Russia, not only sanctions, tariff, taxes by the United States and other countries, but also he knows that Russia sells its oil. That's why he has to go after the Russian oil, the price of the Russian oil, in order to put pressure on Russia. He knows what he's doing, Andrei. He has two options, in my opinion. In his mind, he just accept the reality in Ukraine and go and fight some sort of solution, or doubling down on what the Biden administration has been doing all along.
But no, I mean, that's the whole point. When you say he knows what he's doing, he is one trick pony. They heard about this story about the oil which allegedly crushed the Soviet Union, not understanding that Russia is not the Soviet Union. Economically, actually, Russia is much more powerful than Soviet Union to start with. And specifically, especially when considered the standard of living of Russians, and Russians never lived that well in their history. And yeah, he knows what he's doing per this delusion, which persists among the so-called national security elite in the United States, which is utterly uncultured and uneducated. You have all those political scientists and all those generals from ROTC who have their fundamental, education in like bookkeeping, accounting, or journalism, or biology. So these guys, they do not understand how and what kind of lessons you can distill from things and how you can apply them to the modern realities. They don't. And evidently, Trump still operates on the assumptions which are about 50 years old. But again, look at the professional qualities of the US and Western so-called diplomatic corps. It's not diplomatic corps. They are not diplomats. They are basically, operatives who have no clue about what they are doing except for the mechanical things like, issuing visas, maybe working undercover, which very many diplomats around the world do, and go out, try to find some, source of information, working for CIA, what have you. those people are not, literate. They are not educated. It's the fact, which is we have the new generation of American so-called products from the Ivy League, and when you have people who run Russian programs in Stanford, like this McFall dude, I mean, he is clown basically, So, and that's the result. We have this, and obviously these are the people, including those 25 to 26-year-old referents who also work for that. They collect this information from media. They collect it primarily from American media, and their regurgitation, the echo chamber, begins to, continue to operate. And Trump can do whatever he wants. It doesn't work. There are people much smarter than him and his entourage are on the other side in Russia. And again, as already stated, American experience with that type of situation is minuscule. They just basically emerged as the superpower after the World War II. And since then, the only thing they know is how to make money on the military-industrial complex. But fighting real wars, fighting real, attrition wars, they don't know how. They simply have no tools for that. And as a result, we have these people, once the last generation of the veterans of the World War II, like, Eisenhower or JFK was killed, so they faded away. You have this, the guy's TV showman, okay? And they will continue to do that. But the more he doubles down on it, the more catastrophic will be the result for the United States, which already lost the combined West lost their whole, civilizational struggle, because the economic pivot now, once you discard this garbage of the International Monetary Fund and all this World Bank, about the GDPs, China dwarfs United States economically. It's not just, it's almost, it's almost not fair. China is an economic monster. Russia has some people say it's, third, not even fourth economy in the world. So if Mr. Trump wants to try to fight this, especially with Russia sitting on about 1/3 of all resources in the world, good luck with that. But he doesn't understand how autarky works. His most understanding spreads no further than the market and Wall Street indices. He may be, somewhat informed about some technological issues, but you already remember his super pooper hypersonic missile. We're still waiting for this super pooper hypersonic missile, to materialize. You literally have no industrial and scientific base to do anything about it. So, and as the result, it's economic pressure, and that's the only thing they can do. But the more he does it, the more already mortally wounded US dollar will be fading away into the posterity, basically, and countries will continue to do, which is they're already doing, making their mutual accounts settled in their respective currencies. And precisely because it's, for example, for Russia, it is very profitable to settle accounts between China and Russia in yuans, because you can buy a lot of things in China in yuans, which, by the way, you cannot buy in United States, with which Russia has virtually non-existent economic relations. And this is what Trump doesn't understand. And Russian economic relations with Europe also shrunk to the point of being insignificant. And it will continue to be so until, again, look at this. Many people don't understand. We have this, view of India, for example, okay, that somehow, all kinds of not pleasant things happening there. But many people do not understand. Indians are just gigantic industrial power, which produces all kinds of things. So, and Russians can buy it there. They can buy it from Indonesia, which, by the way, largest Muslim country, joined BRICS. So good luck, So BRICS in reality, BRICS as it stands now. And not by these ridiculous shysters from International Monetary Fund. In real economic terms, BRICS dominates the combined West several times over. So just to give you example, China alone produces number of cars more than whole West combined. From United States to France to what have you, from Italy, and that many people still cannot comprehend that. And when you look attentively at the infrastructure, for example, projects which are being, basically done as we speak, the scale of it is absolutely massive in Russia and in China, so in India and what have you. So, well, there you go. So what can I say? Good luck.
I do believe that they're gonna by next 5 to 10 years they're gonna dominate the market here in Brazil, Andre. They're growing and they're growing so fast here in Brazil.
Yeah.
And Andre, when it comes to the way that Donald Trump is talking about negotiations and trying to force Russia into negotiations, it's not about. I was asking many people that Russia was talking about negotiations all along, and
Mhm.
why Donald Trump is trying to force them into negotiations. The problem is that Donald Trump wants his term to be
Yeah.
imposed on Russia, which wouldn't be, in my opinion, the case when it comes to Russia. How do you find it? How do you see the reaction coming from Russia and from the Putin administration?
Well, it's already have been expressed today by no less than Mr. Peskov himself, the spokesperson for Kremlin. He says we see no change of pattern. So, well, there you go. We're ready to talk if United States wants to talk on the mutually, respectful foundation. The United States is not ready to talk, and one of the reasons why it's not ready to talk is what I am saying non-stop. It lost arms race badly by generations, sometimes several generations of weaponry. It is what you see in terms of the U.S. Army. It is the Army expeditionary force capable of fighting somebody like Iraq under the most favorable conditions. Its table of organization and equipment is stuck in 1990s. It never moved beyond the 1990s concept of the modern war. And in this case, he can do whatever he wants. That's the whole point. What you mentioned, Brazil, do not forget, Trump's geopolitical aims are essentially the new iteration of the Monroe Doctrine. And that includes, of course, Western, hemisphere, and that includes Latin America. Brazil will be forced, as I understand, it doesn't sound good for a number of Brazilians, but Brazil will be forced into the American sphere of interest, while it's nominally remaining in BRICS. But no, Brazil is dependent on the United States. I'll just give you one example. Embraer, while obviously national pride of Brazil, while obviously it's a good, decent, family of the aircraft, Embraer wouldn't exist if not for the American and French engines, such as LEAP engines, or Pratt and Whitney. They wouldn't exist if the, Rockwell Collins avionics and things of this nature. It's only fuselage, which Brazilians do, and it's a beautiful aircraft. But most of it, stuffing, so to speak, practically all of it is made in United States and in Europe. And that's the same goes for pretty much those assembly plants. And Brazil having a large economy, definitely. Do not forget, it's the criteria for being a superpower, which Brazil definitely could have been. But politically, it's impossible, obviously, considering the corruption in the Brazilian elites and things of this nature. You have to have way more than just the large size of economy, including industrial economy. You have to be a top dog in military, aeronautical, space, and nuclear engineering, things of this nature, which are the high-end, high-quality, basically, technological development. And among even China, for all its massive, incredible achievements economically, militarily, it's still not in the same league as Russia. And Russians now look at the United States, which is primarily going to be negotiating any kind of the, if it will come down to this as a strategic framework. But let's not forget, it was United States which abrogated every single arms limitation treaty with Russia. And guess what? And then suddenly they recognized that, my God, what did we do? Well, you lost the arms race. And this is the situation, which is very fluid. But yeah, Trump will be going around trying, they still believe that Europe matters that much for Russians. It doesn't. But as for United States, Russia and the United States virtually have no economic connection.
I think what's happening, at least here in Brazil, is almost irreversible, Andre, because we had a Ford company here in Brazil producing cars that left Brazil because they couldn't compete with the other companies.
Chinese.
And exactly, BYD bought the whole area and just expanded 10, 20 times, and they're going to build a big, huge company producing BYD here in Brazil. And these ties are huge, Andre, between you talk about Indonesia and how important is that. We know that one of the options that Donald Trump has to put pressure on Russia would be Indonesia. And we know that Indonesia has joined BRICS.
BRICS, yep.
Yeah. Here comes the question.
Spain, according to Trump, Spain is already the member of the BRICS. People
he doesn't know. Yeah. This is the problem with Donald Trump. I do believe that he doesn't know how important BRICS is, and he sees that he can break it out anytime he wants.
They always believed it. Yeah, they always believed it. They, as I already stated, they are, in terms of international relations, are very illiterate. They're basically what they produce in Ivy League and all those Harvard, Stanfords, and these are frauds. Most of them, yes, are people, academic people who teach them there. They produce brainwashed ideologues who have no clue. They don't have the required cognitive apparatus to understand reality. In other words, they don't have the toolkit. And so, yeah, they would know, for example, whatever, some, legal foundation for some treaty or something like that. They know how to narrate some things from the point of view of the American history. They do not understand strategic framework because it requires more than just humanities degree in some international relations. You have to understand the military political aspects of it. And in terms of military, United States elites are illiterate. They do not understand what warfare and what is attached to it is required to be a superpower. As the result, we have this what we have. American diplomats are known around the world as arrogant dumbasses, who are there only to dictate conditions for, some kind of whatever the United States wants. And other than that, I mean, U.S. military, it's not a secret. Russian officers, high-level officers, they look at it and it's just like, good Lord. These people do not really understand what war is. And so the fact that they get, snippet or some reality, keyhole type, look into reality doesn't change the whole thing, because as in a combined West, the military education is a joke. And it was degrading and decomposing for the last at least 40 years. And then, of course, the the Gulf War 1.0 happened, and they really believed that they're that good. So beating the crap out of the third world semi-literate military, and they, oh my God, look at this. Well, the reality was, of course, that even then they had problems. And because of that, when you look at this, their, so to speak, strategic balance, it shifted completely. It's not just shifted, it flipped, almost like 180 degrees, especially considering the fact that they, remember Obama, the finest fighting force in history. How the finest fighting force in history continues to lose its wars is completely, it's a puzzle for anybody, because you need to, like Cuba Gooding Jr. in the movie, show me the money, show me the record. The record is not good. And as already stated, it's already scandal between the United States and Russia today, this very day, with Mr. Peskov going on the 2.5-minute explanation of the Trump statement about the, Russia helped to defeat, win the World War II. And this will continue. It is stolen valor. They confabulated much, not all of it, the history of the World War II, because the roots of American greatness and the American, so to speak, hegemony, as it was claimed and grossly overstated to start with, are all on the battlefields of the World War II, and primarily on the Eastern Front. because the United States was making money and profiting greatly. It doesn't mean that it didn't contribute. Of course it did. And it in no way diminishes heroism of American and allied servicemen, GIs and sailors. These are people who did their duty with honor, and so, but reality is the Axis was defeated on the Eastern Front. And the United States came, as usual, very late to basically collect the benefits. And that's exactly what happened. And now Europe, which was liberated, which it was by United States and allies, is going to learn that which they are learning now, means absolutely nothing. Americans want to eat too, so Europe will be done. It's being basically disposed of as we speak. And they are in the panic mode there too. So, but without this, people who have any common sense, they understand you need to have the solid combined West, alliance, if you wish, to deal with Russia, which is impossible now, and Russians don't care anyway, because they are militarily, they certainly don't, and economically, Russia shifted to the east, and it continues this massive shifting to the east. United States will be doing their color revolutions in those places, like Mongolia, but it's too late.
Here is, Andrei, what Donald Trump said about sending more weapons to Ukraine and the situation between the United States and Europe.
Or are you going to turn off the tap soon?
Well, we're looking at that. We're talking to Zelensky. We're going to be talking with President Putin very soon, and we'll see how it all happens. We're going to look at it very soon. One thing I do feel, the European Union should be paying a lot more than they're paying, because under Biden, we're in there for $200 billion more. Now, it affects them more than it affects us. We have an ocean in between, right? Little thing called an ocean. The European Union should equalize. We're in there for $200 billion more than the European Union. What are we, stupid? I guess the answer is yes, because they must think so. But the European Union takes advantage of us tremendously on trade, and they now take advantage of, and always have. If I didn't get involved years ago, in my first term, one of the first things I noticed was that they're not paying enough. They're not paying. And a lot of those countries weren't even paying, the NATO countries. They weren't paying. Only 7 out of 28 were paying. We were one of them. And Poland was one. And they had a few of them that were paying, and some were paying very proudly. Usually the closer to the borderline of Russia they were, the faster they paid, okay? The ones that were further away tended not to pay so fast. And one thing on that, I think they should lift their number not to 2%, but to 5%. NATO should be at 5%, not at 2%. 2% is ridiculous, yeah.
U.S. President Xi.
Yeah, 5% with the current situation of the European economy, it's impossible. It's impossible.
No, it's not only impossible. Many people still do not understand. You go to whatever 5, 7, whatever percent you go, your inflation begins to, skyrocket. The United States basically have been in the business of suppressing inflation, which still they cannot, for a long time. And the question is, what kind of weapons? Well, they can Russians say, send more Abrams, send more Patriots, we'll kill them. Or United States simply has no wherewithal technologically to provide short of nuclear weapons, which of course then will initiate, we all know what it is going to happen to Ukraine. It will cease to exist physically. But other than that, what they can possibly send? Nothing. What hasn't been sent? Okay, they can send F-35s. Russian would love to, shoot down a few of those. And that's what I'm saying. Reality on the ground, military, industrial, technological reality dictates everything, dictates their not only military, but political and geopolitical balance in the world. All this did. And so it's like coming to Russians who know that you are basically down to nothing. Just to give you an example, even these people, in the United States who are into the military porn, they had to admit, yesterday I did the video on that, oh my God, we cannot provide more than 30 barrels for M777 artillery pieces. 30 a month. Russians produced 452 millimeters. It's like, it's not even funny, you know. At least 300 plus, it's the order of magnitude, but Russia already has the actual ramp up capability, which is being built up. And when you look at this, and this actually projects itself over pretty much every weapon system, from air defense complexes, which the United States doesn't even register there as the serious contender for the state-of-the-art modern air defense complexes with the good effectiveness. Then it goes to artillery, then goes in tanks, then goes to everything. And then, of course, smart standoff weapons. You know what? It's been 3 years now since Russia should have ran out of those missiles. Somehow it doesn't. You may say, may ask why? Well, because Russia produces them.
Andrei, we had Xi talking on a video call with Putin, and he's talking about bringing the relationship or the partnership between Russia and China to a new height. What would that mean in your opinion? And what is the necessity of having that right after Donald Trump taking office in Washington?
Well, it's military. I mean, obviously, Chinese want to buy Russian gas and oil for the domestic prices as they exist in Russia. It is the matter of negotiations. I don't think so. Russians will go for that, but they may, give some, so to speak, give and take. It's always with Chinese drive a hard bargain, always did. So, but no, I don't think so. That's going to happen. But still, China will be getting more energy from Russia. And militarily, as I already stated, China, it's the, like with Iran, it is their fundamental premise of their statehood that they do not enter any kind of alliances, And again, don't forget, Chinese consider themselves the, so to speak, the center of the empire, which is the concentric circles around it, which kind of lose this is how they view the world. Those concentric circles, the further they are from the center, they lose their importance. So Chinese have their own, so to speak, issues with that. But militarily, they know they will have to rely on a lot of Russian technology if, God forbid, United States decides to, do the unthinkable with Taiwan, which they're trying to provoke. And so in this case, Russia will make sure that China, at least militarily, especially in strike system, is simply way better than the United States. And Chinese were advancing themselves on a number of the important venues in this respect. But as I already stated, once Xi visited Moscow a few years back, that he probably would ask, and Russians probably will give him Kinzhal. And there is another very interesting story from the United Aircraft Corporation. Their first Su-57E export version was rolled out of the assembly line. So, well, guess who would love to have this aircraft? I'm pretty sure Chinese would love to have that thing. Russians not going to provide them, of course, with the latest engine, but I mean, it's still, even on the current power plant, which they fly, is still outstanding plane with incredible combat history. So that's what China will be getting. And then, of course, Russians and Chinese, they conduct the joint patrols, naval patrols, ship patrols. They do the air patrols of the strategic bombers and things of this nature. So, yeah, they are growing. Those ties growing are very close. And China will need Russia's help, and especially in terms of the planning operations, if it comes down to, God forbids, something around Taiwan, if the United States does the Gulf of Tonkin, as they usually do, false flag, and Chinese will have to respond. And there's a lot of things which are going on there, So, and yes, we can say de facto military alliance without announcing military alliance, but it de facto exists pretty much. Not complete as NATO, but there is a coordination evidently between the general staffs, respective general staffs, and I know Chinese officers are studying in Moscow, an Academy of the General Staff, and I'm pretty sure they are present in the practice mode on the combat lines in the special military operation, learning what is going on the good staff level, brigade and up, So definitely army level staff, they are present there, I'm sure. So yeah, that's what it is. And then we have Iran and Russia, and also while Iran not entering formal military alliance, obviously the fact that military agreement is specifically singled out and it will be developed between the Iranian and Russian military speaks volumes too, and this will be secret agreement. But as I already stated, and you probably heard it, Russians already shipping Su-35s allegedly to Iran, and so who knows? I mean, there's a lot of going on in terms of that. Russians are preparing the landmass, Eurasian landmass, for defending itself if combined West in the last desperate attempt to save itself somehow. Well, they're not going to save; they're going to basically destroy itself. But you cannot explain it to the average politician on the West. But if they will decide to do some unthinkable and start major war, which they will lose, and Russians are preparing that. People around Russia, as I already said, China, or obviously Iran is very important, and we have now India, which is upcoming superpower. I don't know how long it will take for them to really reach that height, but there were, as have been stated by Indians themselves, they will be first recipients of the S-500, which is just mind-boggling air defense complex, and who knows what else. And evidently, Russia and India, they have good relations too, and so the consolidation of the Eurasia, and now with Indonesia entering the picture, my gosh, we're looking at enormous economic and political and military power.
Andrei, we had this comprehensive agreement between Iran and Russia on January 17th. If you were to mention the importance of this deal, how do you see it and how do you find it?
Well, it's tremendously important. Many people do not understand. For all problems with Iran, Iran is a fairly developed country, technologically, I mean, in industrially. Many people don't know Iran produces its own cars, for example, so it's like, wow, and militarily, Iran was a recipient of Russia for just to give you an example, much of the air defense of Iran is basically grounded at the level of those advanced radars such as resonance, which actually is capable of detecting and tracking and developing firing solution even against the hypersonic targets. I believe in this respect, this cooperation will continue. And then, of course, we will have as I already stated, Iran is in a desperate need of updating its air force. And there is this little thing which people have to keep in mind. Iran operates 6 of the Yakovlev 130 trainer aircraft. Why would Iran get those trainer aircraft? Well, because those trainer aircraft are not just primer. This is not the first step. It's the second step of the developing pilots, including in the flight modes of such aircraft as, for example, the Su-35. So you literally can push the button on this in there, the avionics and all is designed such a way that it will mimic the performance, for example, of F-16, F-18, Su-30, Su-35, MiG-29, and things like that. So obviously those aircraft have been bought with the purpose of preparing Iranian pilots for something bigger than Yakovlev 130. So, and that will be a huge issue for Israel, considering the fact that Iran already demonstrated that they have a robust air defense. It is not as good as Russian, but it dealt with Israeli strike really well. I mean, they got some leakers, they got some things obviously damaged or destroyed, but in general, it was very impressive performance. And so now the end will be probably what is being talked in the corridors, a unification of the air defense systems between Iran and Russia, and that will provide completely new level of situational operational awareness, and that's just the start. Who knows what else Iran would want from Russia?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Andrei, for being with us today.
My
Great
pleasure.
pleasure, as always.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.